bug out shelters, let's all remember that in order to achieve that, it's not just a group of people sitting in a basement, that there has to be a infrastructure of power and so forth, just to generalize it, to be able to create those things. And so as we're thinking about it, again, sustainability, being conscious of it, and just being hyper aware before we all race to, think that the AI is going to end the world, right?
I agree.
Shout out to Joe as well. Joe, thank you for sharing what's going on in the Atlanta AI community, and I will definitely be there tomorrow night.
Oh, wow. We're getting links. And by the way, I can't actually see this micro. There's like the little feed here because I need like another screen here so I can actually read what everybody's sending through. So thanks for commenting and sending links. Truly, it's what makes this community so beautiful. But Noelle has joined us.
Hello. Look at us all wearing pink and red.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was listening and kind of lurking, and then I was like, all right, I think I see an in anyway. So thanks for letting me.
Of course. Welcome, Noelle. As you're joining through, why don't you tell everybody you're currently running your iHeart AI challenge. I'm seeing people sign up. I love your new website, by the way. I just think it's phenomenal. I signed up, but I haven't been able to join this week, and I think everybody should be joining what you're doing and be educating and learning and kind of on the journey with you. So why don't you share what you're working on and a little bit about your iHeart AI project and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we both kind of were thinking about this around the same time. Well, you probably were thinking about it long before, but like mid-January, I'm like, oh my gosh, February's like heart month. I should do something. And for those of you who don't know, like every time I got on stage, I wear a shirt that says I Heart AI every time for years, like, I don't know, 4 years now, 5 years. And so I just had this vision. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should start an iHeart AI community. It's a free community, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things, but it's really for those who are just, I mean, as you all know, like we are fast approaching. People are just jumping into the ship, right? Onto the train. I think you called it the train the other day. I was like, the party train of AI. Like everyone realizes that there is opportunity in this space, but not a lot of people really understand it, right? We're jumping in kind of at the end. We're going into like this interesting time where we're not really, it's the hype cycle, right? We're not really asking hard questions. We're kind of, I always remind myself of how this happened at Alexa, 10 years ago. We were all looking around like, yeah, this is amazing. We weren't really thinking that we could hurt people. Like it wasn't even a frame of mind that we could do something that would damage someone's reputation or break a company or lose money. Like we were all on the wave. And so this community was built to be like, hey, yes, of course, let's be excited, but let's also kind of put fingers to a keyboard and learn how this stuff really works. And so it is meant for more newer people to AI. I do have a lot of data scientists in the community because they're awesome and they want to help out. But it is very much, everyone helps everyone. And so it's not like Noelle's community, though I do moderate it and I've already had to kick out someone, which is very not Noelle to do. But I protect the space and create this really amazing. So it's very easy to get to. I'll throw it in the chat. It's basically SKOOL. We're hosting it on School, a new learning community site, and it's iHeart AI is the link. But I love it. It's fun. We've been sharing links. We shared this. I'm actually live, I think, on all my channels because Restream finally fixed their ability to go live. So this is great. Nice to see you all. And I'm super excited to hear. Like you all are talking about, right? The trough of disillusionment. It's all about the hard questions like ESG and how many data centers and like, what about security and trust and latency and all of these things that nobody asks when it's exciting and fun. And we're just playing around with a POC, but becomes the immediate next question. And I'd much rather us do a little design justice and talk about it first. So thanks for having me.
Hi, welcome. So we've first part of the segment, we've covered kind of a little bit about the landscape. We've talked about, kind of touched on, GPTs and a few other things, but the majority of the conversation's been very high level at this stage and kind of touching on search and the advancements in search. And now this next part, we've just finished talking about some of the image generators of choice. So maybe I'll ask you that question first before we go into this next topic. You know, what are your favorite AI image generators and why? Noelle?
Oh, I was like, was that really for me first?
Yeah,
I actually was just, I don't have one. I have like a bunch, but I guess my favorite one, and maybe it's favorite because it gets my hair right more quickly than any other. And even then, that's like 20 prompts to get this to show up in an image. But I would say, and I'm old school, like I've been using Dolly forever, and I tried the Midjourney route, and I came back. It has the least amount of friction. It learns more, and it remembers my prompts over time. And so I like Dolly for that purpose. And Dolly sits right inside of ChatGPT now, so I could just use it super easy. So yeah, so that's my current favorite. But yes, I would love to hear this.
I was going to show everybody a quick hack, but of course, this is the second that OpenAI isn't letting me log in right now. I want to show a quick hack for anybody that isn't, you know, a huge prompt, you know, doesn't have a lot of prompt experience. So let me try to articulate it as best as possible. If you write a really short prompt, like a girl or puppy in the park eating an ice cream, and then you click on the picture, you'll see an information button to the top right. Click that, and it actually gives you the full outline of that prompt, right? Full description of the background and the park, and it'll describe the girl and her facial expression and the flavor of the ice cream. If you copy that into DALL-E, you can actually change those little words around. And if you want the ice cream to be chocolate instead of multicolored or strawberry, if you want the girl to be in a dress, you want it to be sad, you can actually play with the background. I mean, it's absolutely wild. It's definitely increased my prompting abilities. And that's why I use DALL-E all the time for all of my decks. I'm having you know, I'm not artistic at all, but I am now with AI. So, you know, we talked about augmented intelligence, and it's definitely augmenting my abilities to actually create art. So I'm loving it. Okay, so on to the next subject. We're talking a little bit about text, copy, and productivity tools. Obviously, at the top end, we've talked a little bit about Gemini versus ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, like those type of models. I wanted to kind of break into some of the other applications that are currently in the space. And, you know, some of the tools I've had fun using over the years are Copy AI, Jasper, Writer. Noelle, you actually interviewed the co-founder. She's the co-founder, right, of Writer at CES.
Yes, I actually think she's the founder.
Oh, she's the founder. She's solo founder. Look at that.
Yes,
Love it.
but May Habib, she's amazing. And I just love when people, you know, they start companies like this, they grow massively, and you just, you hope and pray they're super accessible and nice. And she's one of the nice, I was like, anytime we could work together. I love when you make relationships. I think we're all like that. Like, you know, once you find good people, you're like, oh my gosh, let's just work together on all the things. So she's amazing. But I love watching the journey of that product, right? Like from where it went last year when people were like, I just want to write a better headline. Like it literally was like the simplest, easiest use case, all the way to now they're helping companies really think about how does this impact marketing, sales, advertising, but your brand messaging when it comes to AI. And it turns into a whole responsible AI, you know, lens, which is awesome to be able to take something as small as like, how do you write a better headline to how do you change the world for the better by making sure you're being authentic with your brand voice using these tools. I really love the journey that she's been on.
Yeah, I love the contextual element of these tools, right? It allows you to give that further context. You know, as we all know, when you sometimes ask ChatGPT or any of the other language models to summarize something for you, it's a very monotone. You have to be very direct with, make it, you know, funny or, but then still it doesn't really have that essence. So yeah, what are, to the audience, what are some of the, you know, content writing tools you're using? I mean, the landscape's huge. So again, I was just trying to pick a couple of tangible tools that if you haven't yet played with them, that people could also take a screenshot of this and go and experiment with other tools as well. So yeah, please, what about you, Steph or Andy or Susan, or, you know, do you guys have any productivity tools that you're enjoying using for content writing?
Sure. There's
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Steph. No.
No, go ahead.
No. I was going to add to the list too, Writerly.ai. So John Ricketts, the founder, I interviewed him, and it's interesting how they're looking at building copy. So almost like having your own GPT within that platform, so that the copy is generated. It's B2B for in your brand voice, in the tone, everything else. And so I wanted to throw that one on the list. I do have a funny otter story. I was in a meeting and someone's otter was there. And at the beginning of the meeting, we were just talking about what were you going to be doing tonight, because it was Super Bowl weekend. And so one person said, "Oh, as soon as we're done this meeting, I'm going to go have a glass of wine." And Otter decided that one of the main themes of the meeting was wine, and it was only mentioned once, which I thought was hysterical. So leave it to a meeting that I'm in to have the focus being wine. I'm just saying.
So yeah, on AI note takers, what has your experience been, everybody? I mean, I've only used Firefly. Do you have any,
Oh my gosh, I should tell you. So I use this tool called Rewind. Have you heard of it?
No.
And basically it sits on my Mac. I have one of the new M3s. It was one of the first things I downloaded. And it hosts literally like right now, it's recording me, it's recording what I say. Many times I will say things and it's actually good. Like it's a good thing. I'm like, later I will hear myself in a recording or on a podcast. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I should write that down. And so I realized how useful it is to have this. It's literally like a rewind button, kind of similar to like the Click movie where you could just press a button and rewind your life. So anything you do on your MacBook, you can rewind it. And there's an iPhone version as well. And it allows you to go and you can see the transcript of the meeting, but you can also see you can hear the voice and snap into that moment in the meeting when someone said something really good and you want to hear it again, which happened to me yesterday. I'm still getting used to integrating it into my life, but having the ability to get a transcript or a replay of anything that I do, whether it's me being on a webcast, a podcast, being on a phone call, a Teams call, like it records all the things. But then, which I love the most, I can just ask it questions, right? I could just go in and be like, hey, remember when I was talking to the publisher, because I'm writing a new book, when I was talking to my new publisher, what date did I tell them that I was going to get the first draft? And it'll go back, find the question, and give it back to me. And I was like, this is awesome, because even my assistants can't help me with the promises I make on calls that they're not on. But now this tool helps me do that. So yeah, it's called Rewind. I think it's .ai, but really cool tool. And I use it all the time to help me kind of grab content, but also even use that content to create other content.
Great, that's an amazing. I'm actually gonna go play with it after this. So happy
Valentine's.
Valentine's.
You'll need a big hard drive.
Playing with AI tools. You anybody else? What are some of your favorite productivity tools and why? Do you have any hacks? I think it's like, again, we're talking technical elements, non-technical elements of AI. We're thinking about it in our personal lives, in our careers. Anybody else want to add anything?
Maybe just a last thing to you on that. And again, on the theme of AI augmented humans, I use it a lot, just saying, improve the writing of this following paragraph. So if I write something, just to put it in there and say, like, just improve the writing of this. And it's amazing how it can actually improve the writing, especially if English is not your first language, like in my case. So So it's really helpful. A lot of colleagues of mine that's in India that does copywriting, it really helps them to improve their writing. So, that's something you spoke about right when we started. It's it's a huge enabler for people. So that's a great part for me. And so it's not like just coming up with ideas, but giving your ideas and say, like, just help me to word this better.
Yeah. Yesterday I got sent a link to this group at MIT that we're meeting. And so I turned up and I was listening to these entrepreneurs and founders speaking, and then academics speaking about not enough more problem solvers than there are problems to solve. And I was like, What about the fact that there is 7,000 plus languages in the world? We have nearly 3 billion people that don't have access to internet, and we're not building applications to be able to communicate with them, to include them, let alone people that might have disabilities and things like that and might not be able to interact in the current forum that we're presenting, right? And I started thinking about that. I was like, wow, like, as we keep increasing the ability to communicate, and the idea that eventually, and this is my dream state for AI, right, where we're including all of these languages, we're being diverse and inclusive of all, but to be able to communicate with somebody in their, not just language, but their tone, their ideal, their format, like to go maybe from, if you don't know sign language, to be able to speak and have an avatar do the sign language for you. I've seen some of those. I'm blown away by that. And the reason I bring that up is because you're talking about language, and I think there is such a big road ahead in the kind of inclusiveness of all languages, inclusiveness of all dialects, inclusiveness of social linguistics and all of the various forms. But I do see it as very much being like an advocate for that. So maybe around the table here, Noelle, I know you have some personal stories as well about that. It's one of the things that we've spoken about quite a few times. So yeah, I would love your feedback and maybe some of your experience with Alexa and what you went through there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I try to keep it like, positive and happy. But it was
good stories, Noelle.
Right. But I think, one of the things that that I like about the world that we're moving into, especially now, I mean, just earlier today, I was talking about, like, today is all about everyday AI. And I use so much technology all the time, like throughout in everything that I do. But I also have, like, I have a son with Down syndrome, so it's infused into his day, whether he likes it or not, because it helps everyone. But my dad also has traumatic brain injury, right? So he lives with me, and I hear him having conversations. Just yesterday, actually, he was having a conversation with Alexa, and he was apologizing for not being more patient and more kind. And I realized the power of robotic companionship, and that some of us don't need it, some of us don't even like it, but it actually is a working thing. Like there is a active use case of an entire community of people that desperately need this. I think so I apologize in advance for those of you who now are going to go and get this rewind thing, because I should disclaim it. Like, it's a lot of data that you're going to collect. And then what happens? Like, the world is full of people collecting a lot of data. And if you don't have tools to actually understand what you're collecting, it could actually just be annoying. So be aware that there's probably a whole class T and I can do on how to use these technologies.
So wild.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think is very interesting about 2024 as we move into it, a lot of people all about, well, for all of us here, it was us being kind of recognized as like, hey, we should talk about this. And you're like, well, we have been talking about this for like a decade. So last year was a lot of resurfacing things that we've talked about. This year, though, I see the conversation shifting a little bit more towards, how do I actually use this in for real? And questions then come up around security and privacy and and latency. And I think, that's my decision to kind of stay focused in a literacy area was intentional, because most people are using this tool, and at first it seems awesome, and then all of a sudden it doesn't, right? I call them AI gone wrong, right? There's so many AI gone wrong stories out there about people who had a great idea and then ended up hurting the very people they were trying to help. Similarly with my dad, like there were times where I implemented technology to help him that actually made his life more frustrating. Alexa, thankfully, wasn't one of them, but we've used robotic processes and it did not work out. And I think we're in this time where people need a bit of prescription from people like us to help them navigate this space, because it's not new. I always say it's an evolution, not a revolution. Though new people are joining the party, getting on the train, like we really need to go back and say things for all of us, like say things that we've been saying for a long time that we didn't have the world listening then, but now they are. So we have to go back and say things that we kind of feel like everybody already knows. And the reality is that there's millions, hundreds of millions of people that are now in this space that don't know what we learned. So it seems old hat, a lot of the things I talk about now. I'm like, I mean, that was 10 years ago. But I think it's critical because people don't know it. They weren't part of our circles back then. So I'm excited about, that's why I was so happy that you did this, to expand the reach even further. And on a love day, yay.
Yay.
Oh, and I love the irony because like a couple of years ago, my dad didn't even know what I did. He thought I was in some kind of voodoo science. He's like, what are you doing? You know, he's in his 80s and he's lost his hearing, but he refuses to wear hearing aids. So our conversations are me literally screaming at my dad. So I'm so excited that now I can leverage this voodoo science of AI and communicate better with my father.
So on that, before we get into the next topic, right, which is why I love hosting workshops and around community and bringing people together, we need more people from all diverse backgrounds to be included in this journey of AI. It isn't just about now voodoo science in the way people think about it, right? It truly is a journey that we need participation from all. And I think by having more people understanding a little bit about AI, how it interacts, how they interact with it every day, being able to provide feedback, getting involved in data annotation programs, or being able to kind of help guide some of these tools and these products, that's going to be key. And I think as more people come online, as we start to see, and what my hope for technology is not a greater divide, but actually in reverse, we actually start enabling things in other countries from a medical perspective, from an education perspective, right? People who haven't had accessibility. And we keep just reminding ourselves. So then every year, every week, every month, every day, we're going to have new people coming in and trying to grasp and understand not just technology, but what AI is. And I think it's just important that we all just keep this conversation going and going. And the lessons we learned 10 years ago, the lessons we learned today are all just as relevant and just as, I think, important for us to continue on. So the next part
I jump in there? Sorry, just to touch on that. I think this is where the discussion around the responsible use of AI is so integral, because if we look at technology like social media that was designed to bring us together, it actually, as a mother of 3 daughters, it actually drove it drove people apart, and it's still very polarizing to a certain degree. And so there are people, as you said so beautifully, like, we're inviting everyone to the AI table. You don't have to be a data scientist. You don't have to know the NVIDIA GPU card, like catalog. You don't have to know all of these things, but coming to the table as someone who is a good human, who puts ethics first, those are the conversations. And Elijah Meeks, he's a co-founder of a company. They're doing a lot of business with OpenAI, and his background is philosophy. And we had this huge conversation about where we've come from, where we're going. As Noelle said, she's the conversations she was having 10 years ago, the conversations I was having in the 90s when I was coding early facial recognition algorithms, like, they're all like very relevant now as we're all coming to the table. But let's not thank you, Jacob. I'm going to preach for a second. Let's not make the same damn mistakes we made with social media. It was cute in the beginning. We all annotated Meta's, then Facebook's facial recognition. Is that Noelle in the picture? Yes. Is that, and now they've just, Mark Zuckerberg said last week, oh, okay, well, we can't really tell you if it's an AI generated image. So you can voluntarily, Kovish, you can voluntarily, Stephanie or T, you can voluntarily say it's an AI image because they want us to annotate their data set again. I hope you all own shares in Meta. So yes, I'm preaching, because as lovely as the dialogue is, let's be responsible this time and not redo the past of what has been so detrimental. Just saying.
Yes. And on that, before we get into video, then let's actually talk about it. I mean, we've only got 18 minutes. Here I was thinking 2 hours would be too long, but we could probably do another 2 on top. Let's talk about deep fakes and generative images for a second, right? We have an election coming up. For some of you out there who might have seen the Taylor Swift deep fake news, where, photos were distributed across X. Pornographic photos of her fan base were able to flag it as content and get it taken down. and not all of us, by the way, I wish I had Taylor Swift's fan base, but not all of us have that luxury of having a fan base to tag ourselves. So let's just talk about deep fakes. Let's talk about some of the risks of generative AI in the light, Susan, of what you were saying about, some of these images, Meta and others are saying that you can't tell whether or not it's generative or real. So what is that? What is the impact to us for fake news, for the elections coming up, for bullies in schools that want to target young children? I mean, let's just round robin for a second.
Yeah.
Susan, you have always been my hero in this topic. You have the best ideas and you inspire me. So I think you should share what you do with your family.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I just, Jacob, yeah, let's leave the cute in 2023. We are the generation regardless of age. I'm 51. I don't care who knows that. We are the generation regardless of age that is literally giving birth to AI as we know it, AI that will change humanity. And so we want to start to think about one of the things I've been very vocal on LinkedIn is OpenAI has no females on their board. And so women give birth, we're 51% of the population. And I want to start this conversation by saying that every company is an AI company. Target is an AI company. Walmart is an AI company. Etsy is an AI company. You damn well better have women on your board because you're giving birth to AI if you're using AI and women give birth. So I just wanted, since you all wanted me to preach, there we have that. So from and Noelle, shouts out to you. I know what it's like to have a special needs child. It's a lot, right? So one of the things with regard to the we spoke about this early in this whole workshop is humans in the loop. Yeah. And right now, if Meta can't tell that something is AI generated, humans, can we tell? That's a question. So being responsible, and T and I did an Instagram live on this. So the first thing we do in our family is we have a code phrase. We had this code phrase. Stephanie asked me yesterday, why did you start that? We had a code phrase back when the kids were little and they were walking to school in the town we were living in Canada. And it was a thing, stranger danger. What if a stranger comes and tries to tell you to get in their car? In Scottsdale last week, this happened. We got a notice from the school where there were individuals trying to pick up young girls who were age, I believe one was age 12, one was my youngest daughter's age, and lure them into the car. This still goes on today. So we came up with a phrase that essentially was to verify that this was actually coming from, a directive from the kids' parents. Now we're seeing with deepfakes with voice, where we have people impersonating other people. So Noelle's dad could, God bless him, get a call like, can you wire me $1,000? Every family should have a code phrase, not just a word. It's never posted. It's never written down. It's never spoken of publicly. That would be the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is to the point of having your tribe around you. There was a period of time over 11 days on Instagram where I had 21 fake accounts, impersonating accounts. And fortunately, I have a big mailing list. I used to do speaking events with Tony Robbins. I had a bunch of people that in my community who rallied around me and was like, oh, here's another one, here's another one. And they kept reporting it to Meta, which was fantastic. And you've got my second point before I hand it back is build your tribe. Your tribe may be 3 people. It might be your kids. It might be your sister. It might be your best girlfriends, but have the conversation, look out for each other, because the criminals only get smarter. The reason I was working on early facial recognition databases, my first job out of university was federal law enforcement. And so what we were attempting to do is use early forms of machine learning to quantify crime scenes and to be able to catch offenders. And so that was back in 90 to 92. So when you think about the criminals, what they were doing then, and they're even smarter now. So get the humans around you, be smart, get your code words going, and don't wait and say that sounds like a really good idea. This is something you should do today.
Excellent advice.
Noelle, do you have any feedback on deep fakes or what you're seeing? And I noticed in the comments as well, you're right, we're not just talking about images. This is somebody having the ability to FaceTime you and video, voice, sound like you. There's, scams out there at the moment that, kidnapping, fake kidnappings and all sorts of different things. So what are you seeing, Noelle?
I think it's fascinating because the nature of these types of crimes, they actually do not provoke any conversation whatsoever. So the victims of these crimes, the parents, the grandparents, that because they literally think they gave this money to their child or to their grandchild, they never even mention it. It doesn't even come up in conversation unless accidentally they're like, what do you mean you need money? I just gave you $10,000, or I just got, accidentally it comes up in conversation. So it's so important. Not only, of course, we've had this word. I also have littles to bigs, and we've got a phrase that we use to make sure that I'm not calling them to leave school. And we have lots of reasons for that, least of all deep, like having someone simulate me, but it's certainly serving us well now. But the thing that I think is so fascinating is that it's more about education. Like, most people don't even know, even if you don't have a word, like just knowing that it's possible that this could be true. I think what I learned, so I was a VP of engineering for National Public Radio in the last election. And if you remember, we were a little bit worried about that too. It turned out, though, that our worry was misplaced in the area of deep fakes because the humans were saying pretty crappy things about each other at that time. And so we were actually more worried about humans saying bad things. But what was possible back then, only 6 labs in the world could do. Today, I do a deep fake of myself. My opening keynote is an introduction with my own deep fake from Hey Jen, right? But it's Hey Jen, it's their instant avatar. But it deep faked in 2 minutes of content. It deep faked my face. It also, though, deep faked my voice, which is what surprised me, because now anyone, and it was free to do. So I don't even have to pay a platform. So I think there is the challenge I have is, sure, we might have deep fakes, but what I learned, I've got about, I don't know, a couple million views on TikTok, and the comments on my deep fake content often is around like truth and belief. And the reality is that even if we have the ability to stamp content, even if we have the ability to use blockchain transactions to identify who created what when, the reality is that it doesn't matter if humanity doesn't know to trust but verify. If humanity doesn't realize that everything they see isn't the truth, and we're not a humanity that leans on false information, satisfy our own need to be right. Like, there's a lot wrong with the human part of our world. Deep fakes, like, is not at the top of my list of things that I have to solve for. Like, I really have to solve for people who see a deep fake and what their initial reaction to it is. And that is more a literacy problem and that's just where we are today. And like I said, I mean, this 5 years ago, I was very worried about deep fakes, and it turned out I'm actually more worried about humanity. So how do I build a humanity that asks questions, that thinks twice before seeing and consuming information? And that's the same impact, Susan, you're mentioning around social media. Like, we know how this plays out. And I do not right now, in the founding rooms that I am in, where people are funding these companies, I don't see any different questions being asked. It is the same as 2008 and it's 2012 when these big cycles happened. No one's asking different questions. And worse, the rooms aren't even that different. It's the same people, the same demographics. So, like I said, it's a human problem, I think, in addition to, of course, the tech is concerning, but I'm a little bit worried about that.
So on the video, again, and for anyone that's in the audience, there is such a vast landscape of generative AI apps. And when I was pulling together some of this material, I was really just trying to keep it to a couple of top apps that are performing really well. It by no means is the best, because I've canvassed the entire market and I've tried every app out there. It was just kind of what's in my preview, what's kind of being circulated with me at the moment. I could have filled this entire slide up with all sorts of different fave video apps. I really loved recently playing with an app called InVideo. Wow, it blew my mind. I give it a small script and it generates minutes of content. Even around AI, I give it a small script and it still generates minutes of content. I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing. Really, really love Synthesia. I've loved them since they've come out. By all stretch of the imagination, they're not the only in the space, but they're one of my favorites. I know, Steph, you were talking about Runway ML yesterday. I haven't played with it. Don't know if you can give some feedback. I'd love to hear from everybody what some of your fave video tools are, what your fave avatar tools might be, so people can have some takeaways.
I'm a big fan of this whole list, but I am particularly taken with Runway and 12 Labs right now. Runway is a video generation, and it is doing extraordinarily creative things. I suggest everybody check it out and try it. Really extraordinary team. And same with 12 Labs. Their multimodal understanding of video is really unparalleled right now. And I think that they suggest on their site a lot of really interesting use cases. We are just starting to look at video in my business. We did start in the film and TV space and looked at embedding whole movies. And the fact that now some of this is possible is really, video is a whole new dimension. It's so many things. It's voice, it's image, it's, and it's not a static thing. So I think this is only going to get better. The CEO of Runway tweeted something about how this is what it looked like last year and this is what it looks like this year. And it was, a stick figure to Spielberg in 12 months. And so this is only going to get even more incredible. I will just make my comment from before, like with image, it's still about prompt engineering. It's still about your ability to get this tool to do what you want. And that is an entire skill in and of itself.
Yeah, and I want to dive into prompt engineering today, but I think we're going to do another breakout on that. Andy, Susan, Noelle, what are some of your favorite video tools?
You know what the sign of a good workshop is that the participants as well as the presenters are learning. So I'm like super excited to try some of these tools. And I did want to share though with you on the topic of deepfakes. Even though we're all in AI, we've all fallen for it before, right? Susan was talking about all these fake profiles. I mean, even people that I meet online that reach out to me, I'm like, is that guy real? So I found out about a site. It's called Face Checker, and it's free. And you put someone's face in there, and it will show you where they pop up all over social media. And I've actually met someone who I thought lived here in Atlanta. I even considered going on a date with him. He was in Perth, Australia, right? I'm sure he didn't even know he was emailing me. So let's all download Face Checker and make sure you run those questionable folks through it.
I think I'm married, but I think there should be Andy should helmet. There should be an AI and singles, like a whole these tools if you're single. These are the ones you avoid. I don't know. I think it'd be very popular. Just to throw my 2 cents in there. The Pictory I use a lot. It's super fast. It's you can throw some text in there. So I'll go on GPT and a GPT I made, and let's say I want to for my new company, The Pause. Let's say there's an article. I'll just give you my all my quick and dirty, fast tips here. So if there's I have on my Google alerts, I have menopause. So if there's something about menopause, I'll go and I'll take the whole article, I'll put it into a GPT I made that's specifically for menopause. Then I'll have it summarize a quick video script of 12 lines, 13 at the max. Then I'll feed it into Pictory and it spits out a video. Now Pictory is backed by Getty Images, so there are tens of thousands of video clips in there, and then I can swap out things that I don't want, and it's so fast. And what that allows, and I think at the end of the day, we always want to give more in value than we take in any remuneration. So especially, talking about menopause, that sometimes there are things like it just came out that the more intense a woman's menopause symptoms are, the more likely she is to have dementia. So it's very very easy for me to take that research, which came out of University of Calgary, shout out to the Canadians, and to create a video that can hopefully help a woman go, hey, maybe I should go to the doctor and get some early testing. So that's why I like that one. And I just, but these are all great tools. And like Andy said, like I have a page of notes of a bunch of tools that I'm excited to check out.
Great.
I'll just add on top of this, beyond tools, I think there's some sort of philosophical conversations we need to have around this topic. I'm going to put a link to a podcast with Scott Belsky, who's the CPO and Chief Strategy Officer of Adobe. And he talks about this sort of utopia of when the internet will have more like a town square. Who will know to trust? How will we know to trust them? And so I do think we need to, in addition to the technology we can use to combat some of these issues, we do need to think philosophically about how we take this online playground, this online town square that we're all living in, and use who is an expert. Like, who's a doctor and a police officer in real life, and it's easy for you then to be able to. We don't really know that online, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do we start thinking about making a different world online that helps us with some of this processing some of these issues? And so, not necessarily identifying a deep fake, but I think it's a really interesting concept.
Love it.
Great point.
Noelle, do you have anything you want to add before we move on?
I mean, we're like almost out of time. I'll just throw out, I put into the chat Pika art. I was just helping someone who had old-fashioned built a children's book on cloud technology. I loved it. It was beautiful. And then they wanted to create, of course, many of the kids don't want to read a book. They want to watch it maybe on YouTube. And so she wanted to create an animation for it. And in a couple minutes, she was able to take human created art, but turn it into a video using this tool, an animated series, actually. And I was quite impressed because it amplified her ability as an individual to do something it takes studios to do. And I loved being able to make her story accessible in that way. So Pika art, I threw it into the chat, but yeah, I love it.
Love Pika art. Will you link the kids book too, or the kids series?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's really good.
Let's show it to my daughter. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, the main character is blonde. I have a blonde child as well, but the main character is blonde, and then there's a darker girl, and I have a blonde. And anyway, it's beautiful. So I'd love to say.
I can't wait.
Bedtime stories on cloud.
Love that. So we're going to finish on just some of the coding tools that are out there. We didn't get to fine tuning on what RAG is or any of those other things. We had so much content to try to give everybody a baseline of kind of the space. And this is one of many sessions that we'll be doing, and we will hyper focus moving forward. What are some of your favorite coding tools? I recently came across Codium and their team. I think I'm blown away by Codium. I don't know if anybody's using Codium, but to the audience, what coding tools are you using, or your customers using? To the speakers, what coding tools do you like to use, and who do you think is ultimately leading the space at the moment?
Ooh, leading the space. That's an interesting. I'll let someone else take that one, because I try to be friends. I'm like, I like them like my children. I try to make them all feel loved. But I will say, I was on the beta for GitHub Copilot during COVID. And so I really, of course, I grew up with that technology getting better and better. And I hated it at first. I thought it was replicating white boy coding skill, stuff. And I now have come to love it a little bit more because of the level of, they asked what I thought and they listened. So that was cool. But I also like maybe a sneak entry is Tab 9. So Tab 9 was a tool I was using to do automated coding tasks before, in, the middle of, I guess, the 2014 to 18 timeframe, before we were doing what we're doing now. And so that was I love that product. I love the team, but I also just met the team at Codium, and they're awesome people. So I like working with awesome people. So now I'm a big believer in the Codium platform as well. But any tool you can use to help people do their job in a happier way and reduce the minutia of nonsense we have to do as developers and scaffolding code, is a good thing. But I really like the people at Codium. So thanks for mentioning them. I
love Codium. As somebody who isn't necessarily as technical as I would like to be when it comes to coding, what I'm most excited about is now with these tools coming out, I have the ability to be able to take an idea and actually build a prototype. And so super fascinated about that space. What about yourselves, ladies? Do you have anything else you'd like to add? We are at time. There's so much content.
I was just going to echo what Nicole said about, I think a lot of the excitement around Copilot, GitHub. The thing I would just say is, because I know, again, we have a varied audience, is the question, Nicole posed a great question. Are we asking the right questions? Is coding something that's going to exist? I interviewed, in my previous company, I interviewed an engineer. I said, how many languages do you code in? 13. Even now, as I'm building the new company with our DevOps team, I'm not even asking that anymore, because there's a lot of great programs out there that are doing the heavy lifting. I haven't written like full code in so long, but I'll tell just a quick story as my last thing I'll say. You have to be the right age to appreciate it. But back in the 80s, I started a Dungeons and Dragons club, and we had a book, the old D&D book and the dice, and I was coding in BASIC. And so I took the book and I made like all these decision trees so I could automate it. So that was less, really and truly. But just wanted to throw this out to everyone. Is the final thing I'll say is don't be intimidated by technology. Technology is here, as we said, to amplify us, to be able to accelerate our abilities. And when you hear things like coding, or you hear things like image generation, or all of those things, get in and get your hands dirty, play with the tools, and have a lot of fun with it, because you never know what you get to create. And I think we're living in a time where we're going to see 70-year-old founders. We're going to see more 8-year-old founders. We're going to see these wide variety of people who have an idea that comes to life faster, efficiently, and with less money, because of all of the AI that we have.
So exciting. It's such an empowering space. Any closing thoughts before we close out? Andy, do you have anything, Stephanie, around coding? And then I just want to do closing remarks.
It's not around coding, but I have the opportunity to be in front of C-suites on a regular basis. And I think since all of us that are on this work, are involved in this workshop, are pretty AI literate, like we understand a lot of the use cases and the terminology, they do not. I mean, this is typically a group of like 50-something-year-old white men, right? They did not study artificial intelligence. It pretty much just popped up in fall of 2022. And it was this iPhone moment, like, I have to have this in my company. And they're getting top-down directives and all this industry hype. And my advice to you, assume they don't understand it at all. And dig deep and make sure that you use humility and grace, and you explain all of the concepts, because I can't tell you how many times I have been in front of extremely important C-suites at gigantic retailers, and one of them will say, what's a GPU? What does edge mean? I mean, concepts that you and I are like, of course everybody knows that. They don't know it. So that would be my advice, is just help them lean in.
Okay. So on that, I'm going to close out with what I opened with. Think about artificial intelligence as augmented intelligence, which is the utilization of AI to enhance our human intelligence rather than replacing it. And I think that's like that key takeaway, and definitely the key direction I want to move in, is just the concept of how can artificial intelligence and human intelligence coexist in a symbiotic relationship where each complement each other, and together they can achieve outcomes that neither could independently. So with that, I want to thank all of my wonderful speakers, who, by the way, are some of the most amazing women I look up to, and men, but he's dropped. And I learn something from them every single day. Please follow them on LinkedIn and all of their socials. They not only host talks, podcasts, write articles, but they speak at all of the big industry events. So follow them. And if you see them anywhere, run up, say hello, take a selfie, post it, share it, and just encourage more people to come on this journey, learn about artificial intelligence, talk about artificial intelligence. And together, I hope we can all build the apps of the future. So with that, thank you all so much.
Thank you, T, for including us. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.